Good evening, everybody. Today is December 3rd. It's Tuesday night. It's a little later, 6:32 p.m. John's already ready for the pledge. So if you join us for our regularly scheduled meeting.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Randy, please.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Retire's here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, our legal counsel Roger Zappa, and our Superintendent of Public Works John Kangas is here.
Thank you. It was 6:32 when we started, just for the record, too. Any public comment? Anybody wants to share any thoughts before we get started? Not right now. Okay, no problem, thank you. That takes care of 2 and 3. Okay. Then I need to read the consent agenda. Pull it up here. Tonight, the consent agenda consists of the approval of regular meeting minutes of November 19th and special meeting minutes of November 22nd and 25th, 2019. Bills payable in the amount of $173,317.23. Committees and other reports tonight include the road committee agenda for December 3rd, the utility building calendar for December. Financials, we have a budget amendment 2019-11 we will read shortly. And correspondence not requiring board action is not a increase in the charter tonight, but a franchise fee payment, which comes in handy.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
Support.
We have motion and support. Do you want to read your
Yeah,
budget amendment?
Budget Amendment 2019-11, and the highlight of that is to authorization is requested to increase revenues, interest and grant revenue and state revenue sharing by $20,000. Offsetting this is an increase in building and grounds as wages charged to the building and grounds have been higher than projected, in addition to supplies and utilities. General services administration increases are reflected in computer services, printing, and publishing, and wage associated cost due to the medical opt-out being higher than budgeted. Also requested is an addition in the solid waste fund revenues and expenditures, mainly due to higher than expected use of the landfill, a November tipping fee increase, as well as community promotion expenses, first Wednesday rubbish drop-off, and etc.
Are you going to say something, Ernie, about this? Okay, because you made the motion. Okay, we need a roll call on this.
Correct. Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Trustee Marks.
Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. You just need approval of the rest of the agenda. I'd have no changes.
I move to accept as presented.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We're going to talk about the budget a little bit tonight. So we have 2 public hearings for the 2020 budget. One is for the budget itself, one is the truth and taxation levy. And I will open the public hearings at 6:36. We need to do these separately, I'm sure.
Correct.
Okay, just want to make sure. Is there anybody that'd like to speak on the 2020 township budget?
3 times.
Yep. I know I only do this once a year, but I do remember. Does anybody want to speak to the 2020 township budget? Is there anybody who'd like to speak about the 2020 township budget? Hearing none. 6:36. That first hearing is closed. The second one will open at 6:37. And the 2020 Truth in Taxation Levy. Does anybody wish to speak to this? Does anybody wish to speak to the fiscal year 2020 Truth in Taxation budget? Not the
No, that's
budget, not the
taxation.
budget, yep.
Levy.
Just looked at the wrong line. Does anybody wish to speak to the 2020 Truth in Taxation Levy? Hearing none, we will close at 6:37 PM. And we will talk about that later. Board education, privilege comment, we have none. Community linkage, any board member comment? Dan said that he has something to share. Dave, I'm sorry. I wrote down Dan, it looked like Dave.
Yeah, I got a couple of comments. One was an email I got from a resident with respect to the special meeting we had on the manager position filling.
Okay,
And she she happens to know Jennifer Mishlow, the first candidate that we interviewed and the first one we considered at the special meeting. And I think the special meeting was on the Monday after that, like the 25th or something. And her comment went that she has known that candidate for quite a number of years, and she was surprised at what went on at the meeting. And so she went and talked to her about it, and she says that everything that was said at the meeting is not what went on. And where she was accused of, or it was commented that she quit so that she wouldn't be fired for malfeasance. She said there's a lot more to the story than that, and we as a board need to do something about the comments that were made at that board meeting. I have to agree with her. I think we made a lot of comments that were totally after the fact, as she had already been voted not to be considered for the manager position, and the comments were made anyway, and they were made as if they were fact. And in fact, I went back and did a little research on it after I got her email, and the only time this whole thing was even addressed at the Newberry Commission meeting was on the 17th of September, and there was a motion made and seconded that she be removed or she'd be suspended pending an investigation for malfeasance. That motion never passed. And then later on, she had submitted her resignation. Those were the only mentions. I went back all the way into July, reading the minutes from the commission meetings all the way up to into October after she had already left there. So the information that we presented in a public format at this meeting was just based on nothing more than conjecture and rumor. And I think if this board is going to make those kind of comments in a public meeting, we ought to make an apology in a public meeting also. And I think this board owes her an apology for what was said. That was that comment.
let's let him finish his comments and we can go back.
The second comment, and I'm not sure how to address this or even if we can talk about it, it was based, a couple comments on the retirement of Superintendent Page. The manager and I have talked about it. I told them I would bring it up at the meeting. I would defer to the manager. How do we handle it?
I don't know that there is anything to handle. All that's occurring is the payout of terminal benefits is being deferred into 2020, so it wouldn't be taxable in 2019 on top of a full year's salary. That requires that he work at least some hours in 2020. So that was the change to the 7th.
Well, I guess the problem, the way it was presented, is where the residents of this township are paying his salary for a week just so he can get a tax break in 2019, which we're asking the residents to ante up so that it makes his tax bill less. I'm not sure that that's reasonable to do that for the taxpayers. And I'll leave that comment where it's at. But that's it. That's all I got.
Okay. John, you want to address the first issue?
I want to make sure that the fact is, we voted on the candidates prior to any announcement being made that might have been best not made public, as Dave indicates. But I want to make sure that the votes that were taken on the candidate that he refers to were clearly made as individuals and of their own decisions based on their finding of the quality and the candidate's qualifications for the job. I think that others on this board who did not support that candidate had other reasons based on the presentation that she made. What I don't want conveyed is that the decisions that were made by individual board members were made based on the information that was later presented that had best been kept in private. My personal decision and my personal vote was not based on that at all. It was based on my own gut feeling about the candidate qualifications. And I just want to make sure that people that are listening to this know that it was not what is being communicated as being the reason why we voted. We had other individual decisions that were made, and the votes were, and we each have one vote, was yes or no on the candidate's own presentation. So I think we need to communicate that as well. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Bernie?
I've been thinking about this now since the meeting and that, and then I went back and I did my research. I started reading minutes from Newbury. Went back a full year reading minutes, and I tell you, it's interesting to read the minutes in some of the other communities. But as Trustee Wiggins indicated, there was only one meeting that anything was brought up at all in the year that I read minutes of it. And it did not go anywhere, did not mean anything as far as I'm concerned, because it was voted down, and it should not have even brought up, because there was nothing to it, that I can do any of my research, I couldn't find nothing. And as Dave says, I think we owe the individual an apology for even bringing it up at this meeting and that. I don't think it was right to do it, because there's no background for it, there's nothing in that. Not a thing that I can find. If someone can prove to me or show me in documentation this, fine. But I can't find it anywhere. I can't see it anywhere in that. I don't think it was proper to bring it up at all. And that's all I'm going to say.
Anybody else? Pete?
Before we voted, I was not aware of any of the stuff that was brought out after, so I voted on my own conscience. So.
Our vote was taken prior to the
The
information that was brought forth, and she was voted down. As far as I'm concerned, that's the end of it. It was a 4-3 vote, and she lost. And that was prior to any information that I brought up.
Yep. It should have died with that. I agree that I will apologize to Jennifer from the board. I think that's appropriate.
Don't do it on behalf of this board member.
All right, then I'll do it under myself.
Do it on me too, because that should never have been brought up to there.
Yes.
Because it's inaccurate information, complete, absolutely inaccurate information.
Plus, it didn't have anything to do, it was after the fact. And I watched the meeting 3 times, and I was disappointed in how it went. I think you could see my face at the end of the meeting, how frustrated I was. Because we have a decorum we have to maintain. And if you go to any of the MTA meetings, you learn that. You have to be careful what you say, when you say, and that's why I was very guarded. We did not have legal representation here, and it was a different and difficult situation for all of us to be in. It's not something we've had to do before. And for the most part, we came through it okay. But I don't want to look like the rest of the municipalities that, if you watched any of her board's meetings, you can see why she struggled. And that's my opinion. She struggled. They were $300,000 away from being bankrupt. In 2 years, she pulled them out of it. And that's firsthand. They got a governor's award for paying off their bond. TV6 went to Newberry. So, I'm sorry that it all had to happen. I'm sorry.
Randy's got a comment.
Randy?
Oh, never mind. I just don't think you should be discussing this in a public meeting, period. It wasn't
Right.
part of the decision, and you think you're opening the door for some liability.
It's been said. Anybody have anything on the second item that Dave brought up? Retirement payout for Kirk? Whose decision is that, Randy? To extend a week? Was it a request from him, or
Say again?
where did that come from? Was that a request from Kirk or a recommendation?
Kirk is our first retiree, first person retiring, and he asked if there was a mechanism in which the payout of his terminal benefits, his unused vacation, personal leave, and sick leave, portion of the sick leave that is contractually paid out, could be carried over into 2020, so it would not impact his taxes in 2019. It would be a significant impact. That's where it came from.
Lynn?
Is that a, does that fall under your direction, or is that something the board can address?
Well, the board can certainly establish, that that's not going to happen, certainly.
You're in charge of the employees.
Yeah,
and-
I mean, it's a payroll request, it's trying to avoid some taxation in 2019. If the board wants to say no, then say no.
I don't know I know you get paid every 2 weeks,
Mhm.
we do. So he'll have a carryover check in January for the rest of December.
It'll be for 2000, it'll be not reported as 2019 wages.
Correct, yeah. So there's probably nothing significant enough there. What about he'll have vacation time or sick time or whatever to pay out too? I mean, does that all go in one check then, is what
Yeah,
you're saying?
it's a lump
So-
sum payment. Yeah, it's a lump sum payment at the end of the year.
What do other people do? Is there any,
You can carry it over, you can carry the vacation over into the following year if you wish, but he's terminating, he's retiring, so I mean, it's up to the board. Like I said, it's the first time this has come up. He's the first retiree that's had any kind of a, well, he's the first retiree, actually. And I didn't see it as a significant request. I mean, it's not like he's going to be sitting out in the parking lot. He'll be working during that pay period. But if the board chooses not to, then it will.
What's that going to cost the taxpayers?
Pardon me?
What would that cost the taxpayers?
It's just a week's pay, same as any other week.
Nothing extra?
No, so it'd be at the 2019 rate, current wage rate.
After 40 years of employment, I mean, I don't think that's a big request if it's not going to cost the taxpayers anything.
Well, it'll be the wages, but,
But
it'll
it's
still
going to
be
get the wages anyhow.
correct.
No, he wouldn't. He'd be finished the 31st.
The wages are still going to be there. You're going to pay them either before the 1st of January, or you're going to pay them after the 1st of January. It's,
The paycheck may come in January 5th or 8th or something.
The pay
but
period
it's
will
for the
carry over into
2019.
2020, but it will be 2019 wages. It'll be reported as earnings in 2019.
okay, what is that going to cost the taxpayers? Anything?
He's asking for another week's
Another week's pay,
pay.
basically.
To work another week.
So he wants to work the week. He's not just asking for the
Right.
pay.
Yes. Retire on January 7th instead of December 31st.
So the taxes get shifted to 2020. The tax burden gets,
So he's not, I
Less.
thought he was, by the way Dave explained it, I thought he was asking for another week's pay and not working for
No,
it.
work another week. Work 1 week into 2020, so it would be reported as 2020 wages, the payout,
Extending his retirement till January 7th or something like that?
7th.
oh, so I'm sorry. Okay, Dan. Dave,
I'm good.
you good? Ernie?
I can see where he's going as far as taxes, because I ran into that. Big time. When you pay $28,000 in taxes, you have annual leave and sick leave and everything else, and then I know where he's coming from. Question I have, has he made a formal request to change his retirement date by 1 week?
Through payroll, yes. Not through me, but through payroll.
Payroll doesn't control retirement.
No, it doesn't.
It would have to go through you to make a formal request to change the retirement date from the end of December to the first.
It would actually be the retirement system that he files with.
So not just us, this affects MERS too?
It's just the date.
Yeah.
I think he submitted January 7th as the date. The actual retirement date.
I don't know. I can have time to
Question
think
is, do you want him to work 1 extra week or not? That's the question. If he works 1 extra week, then it gets, all of his terminal benefits get reported for US taxes, for income taxes, as 2020 earnings. If not, it's 2019 earnings, and he gets the tax smack.
The guy
Personally, I
gave
don't
40
see it as a
years of his
significant
life.
issue.
No.
He gave 40 years of his life to the township.
I personally
and
don't see it as a significant issue.
It's not a big deal to me.
It's 1 extra week of work.
Yeah, it's not costing us
No.
anything but 1 week of wages.
By changing the date, will he gain additional annual leave and sick
No.
leave for that time?
No. Nothing additional. 1 extra week of pay. That's it.
Go ahead, Dave.
I didn't say it was a big deal. I said that there were a couple residents commented about it, and I said I would bring it up at the board meeting. I don't care one way or the other what the board decides to
Good
do.
question. I mean, I'm glad they're asking things. I'm glad they're paying attention.
I'm just wondering how they found out, where'd they get the information from?
Don't know. Didn't ask.
Well, I think if we can help the person with something like that, I'd go with it. It's not gonna cost us some money, it's no earth-shaking thing. So so.
Did the board actually approve him retiring on the 31st, or was it because he submitted it to you and?
He just said he was retiring at the end of the year. We presumed it was December 31st.
So we don't really need anything in writing or a motion? Okay.
So with the holiday, Christmas holiday, New Year's holiday, and closing them before and after, so he didn't really get that many days in, so he has to work the week later to make up his time. Let's move right along.
We move to the next thing? Okay.
Next item.
In building expansion. The last couple of years, Randy and I have been talking about this. It's been really that long. And it has been brought up at a couple of meetings to talk to you gentlemen about that we are running out of space. We are renting 3 lockers, garages, little garages for storage, primarily paperwork for the most part, but we do have equipment and lawnmowers and stuff like that that could be stored somewhere. We actually looked at going this direction at one point and putting up some kind of a garage. We talked about that. Then we ended up buying that little extra piece and using it for parking because we were running out of parking for many of the events that were taking place here. People were renting the hall. So we've kind of tried to look at different areas in town and, or in this area specifically because we're centrally located. And every time Randy'd say, well, how about this lot? Okay, go check on that, you know? Boom, it'd be sold. Like this one over here, the church bought over here, this one over here. So we're kind of, I said, let's just talk to the board and see what they want to do. You've got a couple easy things that we can do. We can keep the 3 lockers, it's $600 a month. That's the one end. The other end would be to build a whole new building for us and sell this one. In between that, you could build a garage somewhere, on a piece of land. You could, I mean, we're brainstorming. We're trying to figure out,
Did I hear you just say build a
Yeah,
home?
can you back that up one step?
yeah. I'm
Sell
giving you
this
the
one?
extreme. I'm giving you the extremes, okay? Stay with what we got,
Caught me off guard.
okay? That's all right. You could
Yeah, I caught that.
buy another piece of land, put up a garage. We can't put a basement in here. We can't go up. We could take the community room, put files in there and stuff. We could build another building at the old Public Works building. We could try to put something across the street. This is what happens when you brainstorm, okay? You start thinking about all these different options that you have, if you have any.
What about next to the, on Vanderboom there? You got one storage building that, on the, what would it be, on the east, why not to the south? How far over do we own and put something up there? The old fire hall.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
We don't own, how far over do
we
we?
kind of
Garage
discounted
door.
that.
I don't own the rest of that, and it's rock, yeah.
Well, then you'd have the piece of the rock.
Let Randy,
Yeah, the Prudential.
let Randy chime in here.
We don't need to get into all the history of everything that's occurred. Bottom line is, we're out of space. Already, we're 5 years into this building. This is our 6th year in the building. We've used up all of our space except one conference room. Converted the small conference room to an office because our demand for staffing and our demand for activity is growing. And, you know, when this building was constructed, it was not constructed to be a 25-year solution. It was constructed to be a short-term solution, and we're there already. There's no storage space. We have no room for equipment. This building cannot be expanded. It can't be built up. It can't be built out because of the configuration of it. These are all design issues that was debated and debated and debated before the decision went forward to build this building, and we're there now. In terms of township offices, your ideal place to be is where we are, in the middle of the township. Trowbridge, your residential area is right here. You're surrounded by the developing area. but there's nowhere else to go here. You know, as Lynn mentioned, over the last 5 years, all of the available space that's out here has been taken up. People have bought it. Even the building that's on the end of our parking lot, before we had a chance to even buy that, acquire that piece of property, it was sold to, guess who? The developer of this area. You know, so the point that I brought up with Lynn is very soon you're going to be facing a very critical space issue. As she mentioned, we're renting space to store documents that we have to keep because there's nowhere here to keep it. The vault's already full. As Clerk Rattari can attest, he was just talking about where his office should be. It should be next to this room, but it's not. We wanted to bring it to the board's attention because you're about to start your strategic plan sessions in January. It's one of your critical elements to look at. What are you going to do as you continue to expand? You know, you're going to need additional staff as this community keeps growing.
What about the lot behind the fire department?
Church owns that.
All of it?
North
Right
End
up
Church
to-
bought the whole thing. We were looking at right directly across the street, and before we had a chance to even ask Chuck about it,
Said it.
Northern Orthotics bought it and put a building up on it. Got a financial office on the other end of our parking lot. We can't go that way anymore. What Supervisor Grant was talking about is in our discussions with the people we've been talking with, they suggested that one of the things that we might do is take the community room and convert that to the uses that we need to use and find someplace else for our community room. So, I mean, we wanted to just bring it to you at this point for you to start thinking about it. What direction does the board want to go to? Because in the very, very near future, you're going to be faced with necessity to expand and nowhere to expand.
Well, the only other way you can go north a little bit and add on to the north end of it, because you're talking storage, you're not talking parking spaces or anything else, you know, and then take this one for your storage and then move the board over and.
Well, we wanted
Gotta
to
look this
start
way
the
once in a while.
conversation because, you know,
Waiting to him to finish
we
the
wanted to
sentence.
start the conversation because you're going to be facing it very quickly. Growing community. You know, you're going to see in the census that we've got more population. We've got a handful of new businesses starting this spring that we're working on site plans right now that are going to demand additional service. So we wanted to bring it up, at least to plant the seed for board members to start thinking about as you start getting into your discussions of strategic planning on where your thought process might be in terms of what do we do?
Can't go
up.
west, can't go east.
Can't go up. This building was not constructed to be able to put a second floor on. Can't go down. Can't go that way because you've got a road right away. So the only option we've got is going to the north.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but don't we have room for like a 3 or 4 car style garage there, 75 or 80 feet long and 25 or 35 feet deep?
Possibly, but that doesn't solve office space.
No, but it would get us by until we could then plan something for the future.
Well,
I
but
mean,
again,
you're talking what?
These are
A
items.
couple $1 million?
These are items that the board needs to
Yeah, we
consider
don't
in
need to
terms
talk
of where
about
you're
it
going.
tonight.
Yeah. Wow.
We want you to start thinking about it.
I think you caught us all by surprise.
Yeah, we've been trying to figure out what to do. Dave, I think you were first.
Yeah, we start out talking about storage, and we're down to talking about office space now, so we need both, right?
Yeah, you can be facing, because there's nowhere else in here unless you take the last conference room and turn it into
Well, I
office
think
space.
when you start thinking about it, the cheapest alternative for construction would be to convert the community room into offices and build another community room down on the other end.
Absolutely.
That's actually what we came up with.
But then I think
the
when you
least
start
cost.
talking about storage, unless it's all inside, there's covenants in here that you can't have outside storage in here.
Yep.
So you couldn't park equipment outside or anything like
No,
that.
But you'd
Well,
incorporate that in with the community room.
Right.
And just make it a bigger building.
So you're talking about almost building all the way down to the end of the parking lot.
Pretty close. Pretty close. But it's again, it's something that needs to be thought about as you're going into strategic planning in terms of how do you want to address. We've talked about going in the other direction towards, towards Trowbridge. We've got some buffer there with Ryan's Alley through there, but it's not very big and it's awful wet. So you got DEQ issues, so I mean, it's
And actually,
starting to
Keith,
face the same issues we had at the old Township Hall.
you were going to talk to,
Yeah, he has to call back though. So I'll call him tomorrow again.
okay, Ernie?
We're talking about building and everything else. I think first we have to put on paper, what is it we're looking for, what is it we need?
Well, that's why we're
That's the
starting
first
it.
thing. Forget about a building or forget about moving or anything else. What is it that we need now and in the next 5 to 10 years and that we don't have now? And once you have that on paper, then you can start looking at what kind of physical location do we have to have and what kind of building do we have to meet those needs. I think we have to.
We already did that, but that's what we
Well,
want you
that's
to
what we
start
have to
thinking
do,
about.
is lay out and
Yep.
for storage, or storage of any different kind, and also for future office. These are things we need to put down on paper. Once you get that on paper, then we can talk about what we have to do to meet those needs.
Well, before you get it on paper, you have to have a concept.
Yeah.
And, and that's what we're talking about right now, is from the standpoint of the board, you need to at least be thinking about what the concept might be in terms of what would be acceptable to the board and what wouldn't be acceptable to the board, and then we can put things on paper. So we wanted to bring it to your attention at this meeting, because we're coming up on the end of the year, and space is getting taken up in case you want to, if the desire is to try and secure something so you have some expansion space in the next year or 2 years or 3 years or 5 years, you need to acquire that space now because it's getting built up. So that's why we wanted to bring it up. We
John?
do have some capability currently of things that are relatively close, but they're being developed for sale.
Thank you. I think that you've got the board's attention. I think what's been asked for is just some kind of a wish list that they want before they act. And I have a question, because we are not privy to all properties around adjacent to the township hall. Is there any property west of the fire hall that's available? It's all gone
That has all been purchased by the North Iron Church.
by a church? Well, we need to get religion then.
North Iron Church out of Nagani has purchased that property for
Okay.
potential location of a new
They-
church.
I just want to know whether any religious movement could be made to purchase. Well, the reason I'm bringing that up is I think there's an advantage if you're going to have an adjacent facility, that it be adjacent to somewhere where we have people on a regular basis, or sometime soon we're going to have them there on a permanent basis.
Correct.
I think it's good to have that kind of proximity to people who are employed by the township.
One of the.
So I would ask that that be given some thought. It could be that the facility that has purchased that property doesn't need all of it.
They will need all of it. They're proposing a 1,000-seat church.
Amen.
You're a religious person. I think you are our agent to put on that. Thank you.
That's certainly an option, and that was a piece of property that we had our eye on, but quite frankly, there's no way in the world we could finance the purchase of the property for what they paid for it. Not by any stretch of the imagination, or would we be even close to the amount of money they paid for that piece of property. The reason we wanted to bring it up is because right now there are two pieces of property that would be available that would be big enough for us to do something on. One is currently being developed on the other side, just on the other side of Moran. And the other is on the far side, the tree line, big, here on the other side of the Cornerstone development. There's about 20 acres over there, and there's, I think it's like 6 acres, 6.5 acres on this other side. But again, it's being put on the market, and if it gets snapped up, that's gone. So we wanted to bring it to the board's attention that we're facing some coming issues. The only piece that we actually control is the part north of us, along our parking lot. And we have some issues there because you have 2 creeks, 2 streams that their headwaters come out of the back of this berm. It's the reason we could not build Ryan's Avenue Road.
How about our neighbor to the south? Are they happy where they are? Are they
To the south.
next door?
The building next
Yeah.
door? They just, yeah, that's local.
They look kind of
local
crowded
owner.
over there.
It's a local owner, yeah.
Dan's been waiting.
Thank you.
No, I thought I had my light off. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
It might have been,
Ernie's chomping at the bit then.
So at this point, it's for consideration for you to think about in terms of what might the board be inclined to want to take a look at. I mean, if your decision is, we'll just see where it goes and how much more demand there is and when that might be, and then we'll worry about it at that time. Or if you want to acquire a piece of property for the purpose of some future expansion, if you decide not to, you can sell it. So, I mean, that's the thought process.
Go ahead, Ernie.
2 things I think we need to look at. Should come to the board, a couple options, 3 options of property to look at. And knowing that we're gonna have to do something in that. But I don't know what those options are. I think we as a board need to look at. Now, if you look to the west, all that open land with all the trees and that over there, we can't afford that.
Nope. That's 40 acres. That's the area that the hospital was looking at. They couldn't afford it.
There's $4 million they want for that
Yeah,
property.
I know.
And I know who owns it.
And they're not
The
going to
daughter
change.
who's
Yep.
the
And
daughter
they're,
of the original owner.
and they're not going to come off their price.
No, they're not.
Lots of people have tried.
I know. But I think we need to have a couple options. If property is moving this quickly in the area, we may have to move quickly, not wanting to spend the money, but we're looking at the future, looking at what options we have in it.
Well, the one thing for certain, if you acquire a piece of vacant property right now within the Cornerstone development, you're not going to lose money on it.
So again, we just wanted you to start thinking about it, because we've seriously been talking about it for 2 years, trying to figure out what to even bring to you. Let's try thinking about this. Wow, that's sold. Let's try about this, so.
well, if the dark store issue wasn't there hanging over us, we'd have the money to do it, but where's the money gonna come from?
Save the thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be part of January.
This might be a good work session topic.
Yep, absolutely. I'm trying to figure out my January. Okay. Oh, sir. I'm sorry. Must have done it after I looked at Dan.
I think a couple things, I agree with Treasurer Johnson, a couple things we need to know right before we start talking about any of this stuff is an estimate of the square footage size we need for additional offices and an estimate of the square footage size we need for storage. And once you've got those 2 items set, then you can start looking for a piece of property that'll accommodate them. But it'd be interesting to see those 2 estimates first. And I think if we're gonna look at office building square footage, we should be going out a lot more than 5 years.
Yep, that's where we're going. Okay,
Good. Thank you.
yep. Committee updates. Dave?
Okay, Planning Commission, the November 13th Planning Commission was already reported at the November 19th board meeting. The Planning Commission meeting at the end of the month was canceled. The Road Committee, there was, normally it would be reported at next meeting, but we have some activities tonight, and one is on a poster over on an easel by the flags, and that is a visual representation of what, and I know you can't see it from here, but when you get a chance to take a look at it, is a visual representation of what RoadSoft recommends for road repairs. And it recommends predominantly crack seal with some chip seal and some hot patch. And the board, or the committee, moved that to the manager tonight, so I'll get something out to the manager about recommending an RFP be put out for it. A couple things that we did leave on there that are kind of hot button items is Moran Street. And what are we going to do with that? And there is a couple items that may eventually get pulled off, and one of that is over here on Venture and Commerce, where, because apparently, according to the superintendent of public works, he has some dealings with the county today, and they're looking at some road rehabilitation along Wright Street and 492 for 2021, correct?
The Forestville intersection?
The Wright Street project, 492 and Wright Street would be for 2020.
2020.
I believe the Commerce Drive project would be 2021 if they're successful in acquiring that grant.
They're still trying to get some grant money for commerce, and the only thing that is on the asset management report for 2020 is to fix the intersection of Venture and Commerce where that's fallen apart by the fire hall. Depending on, it's going to be the road committee's recommendation that we include it in the RFP, and if we pull it out next spring because we get some more definitive word on what the county's planning on doing there in 2021, then we could pull it out and save ourselves some money. But
I was gonna say, that's their project then.
yeah, but that'll be going to the manager this week yet, as far as a recommendation from the committee.
Yeah, I think he wants to address that before you go farther.
Just a quick question.
Right.
What's being recommended for road software and RFP, is that part of the roads project out of the 1.5 mils, or is that a
Correct.
separate project?
Correct.
Oh, okay.
So is it the red? I can see the red from here. Is
Yeah,
that
I can
what
see
the
it.
recommendations are?
Well, no, there's actually a couple of colors
Couple
there. One
further
is red, which is the hot patch candidate, and primarily the hot patch is on Fair, and there's a little bit on Venture, right on the corner of Venture and Commerce over here where that's falling apart, and then there's one on Moran Street down towards Ontario, towards Cox, where that drainage issue exists. It was the committee's recommendation that we leave those on there to be included as an alternate in the estimate for the RFP, and then make a decision on them. There's another cul-de-sac over in Bishop Woods that's recommended for a hot patch, which is, I don't know how we missed it all these years. It turned out the cul-de-sac was not on our map. We found it. We found it when we were out doing our road trip, and we couldn't find it on the map, so he had to go put it in. So I don't think it got anything done to that little piece all these times we've been out there. So the recommendation would be the same as it was for last year, that we get estimates for the crack seals, and then alternate bids for the chip seal and the hot patch areas, and then make a decision based on what the cost is. The rest of the Recreation Committee was up next for the November 19th meeting. They sent the conceptual drawing for the ice rink roof to the Planning Commission for their consideration. Understand, before everybody goes crazy, there's no money to do anything. But the board suggested that we move on with the concept drawing, so it's gone as far as it can go until we find money to do it. The Safe Routes to School, North Star Academy is working with the state of Michigan to submit another application to increase the pathways over in that area for another Safe Routes to School grant. And initially, tentatively, they were looking at from the pathway that goes down Venture and connects with the school. They're looking at continuing that north up the old Wright Street to 41 and connect to that pathway that's coming across as part of the tunnel in the US 41 corridor upgrade. But they're the school and the state of Michigan works with that. Jason gets involved in it towards the end when it actually comes to putting the grant together. And then just a reminder for the Marquette Area Climate and Health Adaptation Project. That's what we got awarded the $30,000 grant for. That town hall meeting is going to be 6:30 on December the 16th. And they're looking for input from the residents on what you think should be considered in the corridor. And then we have a resident request to consider a Huron Avenue pathway. It runs from Granite across the undeveloped right-of-way up to approaches East Avenue. There is a pathway that's been used forever by the residents through there, and it goes through a little wet area there, and they're looking to maybe if they can get some stone or gravel or something in there to dry it up. So we said we'd bring it up here and see if it flies anyplace.
Where?
It is on the end of Huron and Granite. There's a T-corner there. If you continue eastbound on Huron from Granite, you go through an undeveloped right-of-way that connects to Huron over by East Avenue, which is the city limits. And there is a creek, sometimes creek, that runs through there and keeps that pretty wet, and they're just looking to see if they can get some gravel to make that a better pathway through there so they can use it.
So they want to put gravel in to dry up the creek?
Yeah, no, they want to put some kind of stone or something in there. They don't know what they want. They just want to get it so that they're not walking in 4 inches of mud.
Is it just north of the Meister's property there, the green?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry, just south of Meister's?
Take Huron and
south,
go
yeah.
across
Yeah.
Granite.
Goes right off the end of Huron and connects to Huron on the other side. Something like that. That might be something you want to kick back the planning commission or the rec committee, and maybe there's some grant funds or something out there that we can use to do something like that.
Pretty healthy creek through there. Do you think DEQ has to be involved in that?
Yeah, you wouldn't know until you got some money to do something with it. It'd take a little bit of research to see what you can do with it.
Probably a boardwalk type of thing would be
And
more
then
acceptable with grant.
it would end,
Right.
I'm trying to figure out who owns the property or where. If
It's undeveloped right away. It would end right at the street.
At the city.
There's another short stub of street that comes off East Avenue. It's Huron Avenue over there too. And it comes down about 300 feet or so and then ends.
You're talking perpendicular to Wright Street,
Yeah.
Yeah.
along
Mhm.
that street?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do we want, okay, Ernie.
I would say we send it back to the rec committee or the planning committee for further review and recommendation, come back to the board.
Yeah, and that's all they're looking for, and that's just some guidance on what to do with it.
You want to go to roads, right? Or you
No,
said
it's
rec-
actually rec committee, or it should actually go to the planning commission, then they can hand it out to the rec committee to come up with ideas.
You want a motion?
No, couldn't.
Consensus?
You're going from committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just looking for
Committee to
a little
committee.
direction from the board.
No, you'd actually have probably the recreation committee making the recommendation to planning.
Mm-hmm. Just trying to keep you informed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it.
Thank you. Thank you. That was part of the committee reports?
Yep.
Okay, my point is that 9A was board committee updates. And we all, I think, all got emails, and I was able to figure out all of them. I know the supervisor appointees and with board approval. Did you want to act on that?
Tonight, no.
Why
No,
not?
that's just for information. I was hoping to have something for you by next week, because there's still a few
You
people.
want to wait
missing.
for another meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
The terms
just-
are
just-
up next
Just
week.
as an aside, most of it was relatively easy to figure out where the supervisor was intending to go and recommend. Except there's one on there that says no. Could you explain that? Here, I have mine.
Well, I think that was that particular member's response.
Yeah, she's not going to continue. I'm not
So
sure why it was on
somebody-
there twice.
That meant somebody was withdrawing.
Yes,
Okay,
that's the only
That's fine.
position that we know of so far.
Is that the
okay,
planning
thank you.
commission?
I'm all done.
One thing I noticed on there is the event committee's not listed.
It's on the second page, probably.
Yeah, this is,
Entertainment.
this is staff's copy.
Okay.
We've been told that we can't resign.
Okay, I'll ask her.
One page. I think there might be two.
Yeah, originally I
committees on
had
there.
all of them on one page on purpose, that's what I sent her. And then she went ahead and did the emails and checked with these people. Okay, I'll check on that. Thanks. All right, anything else on the committees for now?
Thank you for going back.
Yep.
Want to do it? You want to do it now? Do you want to do the events committee report, or do you want me to do it?
You can do it. You do a better job.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, I wrote that at the bottom. I've got it on my sheet to see, because we've already done so many this year. What's next?
Well, community events, basically, we just wrapped up the Christmas tree lighting, and sorry to say the Christmas tree didn't survive the storm very well. It's looking pretty shabby right now.
Sad.
It got a little frozen with the ice and then the snow on top of it, so we're going to have to do some repair work there to keep it going through January. But anyway, we had the event last Tuesday night. It was very well attended. The weather was almost perfect for it. I'll be talking more about it in my manager's report, but we had a lot of support from the community, the Business Association, Super One Foods, Honor Credit Union. It was really a good time. Fire department brought Santa Claus in. The music went off without a hitch. All the reports that I heard from folks was that they thought it was a lot of fun, a good time. We got a lot of people into the mall. They hung around for quite a while, so we had the opportunity to talk to them a little bit about the music on the mall the third Thursday of every month for the rest of the winter. Community Events Committee is in the process of trying to organize a continuation of the farmers market that happens in the summertime in the city of Marquette. We're going to try to keep that going in the wintertime inside the mall. So that's in the formative process right now. The chair of the committee, Todd Nordyke, and Trustee LaRue and myself and Barb Wiegand are continuing to work on those concepts, basically, to try and get a little more activity into the mall and benefit the new owners. So just a quick update. Always looking for more volunteers to work on the committee. Our next event is probably going to be around the ice rink. We'll probably be doing some kind of a hockey-related event midwinter, probably in not later than mid-January. We get much later than that, and we start losing the ice when the sun starts getting up a little higher arc. So probably sometime in mid-January, try and get, hopefully we'll have ice by then, and get some activity at the ice rink. Have a tournament of some sort again. So just a quick report.
Thanks. Pete?
I'd like to add a little bit to that. I mean, as far as putting on different events in different areas, and sometimes you can run across problems that, people say, oh, you can't do that, you can't do this, and stuff like that. But with the cooperation with the Westwood Mall, inviting us in, I mean, we needed another space at the last minute. We need some tables at the last minute. They're all went and got them. So it was very good cooperation from the Westwood Mall. The parking, Applebee's, Aspen Dental out there, and just, unbelievable that nobody complains, because we block it off. So, I mean, it just went over so great, and I gotta appreciate them people. So, and I appreciate Randy and Barb and Todd. There's lots of work that goes along in the background, and they seem to get it all done, and so it's just very nice to work with a group like that, so,
The Grinch did get arrested again,
yes.
put in confinement.
And Super
Kids
One,
loved it.
I forgot, Super One did a great job with the hot dogs, the brats, and the sodas and that, and cookies. And Honor had all the popcorn there that you want, and we had hot chocolate. So, I mean, it was a good event.
All was packed. It was nice to see.
Yep.
Could not walk through there. Thanks.
It was so funny because people who never made it, they apologized for not coming. I had to go to the doctors today, and the two girls who didn't make it, they apologized because they didn't come. I said, well, just take a donation then.
All right, then we had the draft committee reports as part of the packet. 9C and D are kind of together. As I've told you before, I'm trying to get January and February going. So let's talk about policy governance a little bit. The deciding factor for me to vote for it 2 years ago was knowing that at some point we would have new staff, new management, new something, new board, and I saw it as an easy way to help facilitate both sides. And I still think that's the case. So now we know for sure that we're gonna have a new manager at some point. Sometime after November next year, we're gonna have a new board. It's gonna be different people here. Probably neither of them may know anything about policy governance, hard to say. The last real calendar that we went through was last year. We didn't, I purposely didn't do a whole lot with it in 19 because you guys kind of didn't want to. You didn't want to have to look at the policies every month. We felt pretty stable with what we had. We did make a couple of changes in 2018, added a couple policies, one for sure that I can think of. So I'm looking for direction on what happens next. We have not followed up with our assessment of each other, of the manager, and how we're operating. We can go back to the calendar, we can shrink it down and just do something quarterly if you want. I think we need, since it's really been 2 years, or will be 2 years, we need to probably go through the policies and at least make sure for, our operating year, the next year, that we have everything that we hope to. And I want to point out again that these little things that I have up here about the topics are what we're supposed to use every time we have an agenda in front of us. We're supposed to ask ourselves, why do we have this item in front of us? Is it a board item? Is it a management item? Has it been discussed? Do we have a policy? Why is it in front of us? And I've kind of lagged on that because we've been busy. We've had a lot of different issues to do. So there's a scope, the point I'm trying to make is there's a scope of policy governance that we've kind of put to the back burner. And if you want to try to resurrect that in some form, we have, like I said, our policies established. Maybe that's what we want to do. So you don't have to decide anything now. We're going to have to get going on a lot of things in January and February. Strategic planning, we can put it all together if you want to have Susan Radwan come back and do a refresher and go over the policies. We can have a work session, figure out how we want to proceed for the next year. We can just do our own strategic planning. So just think about it. We need to figure out how we want to continue. We have a building problem, storage problem we have to consider. We've got new management that we're going to have to make sure they have the right direction. We'll have a new board. We need to make sure that they have the new policies and that they have the right information, and that falls a lot to the manager. So if we have a new manager, we got to make sure that that flows. There's, a lot of orientation that has to happen with new board members. We may have new committee members to deal with. So we've got a lot of organizational board stuff we have to do. And I can give you a list. I can put together some guidelines. I can go back to the spreadsheet calendar. So we need some direction. Maybe we can talk about it at the next meeting and figure out how you think you'd like to see it for January. And then we need a work session, maybe like the second week in January, to kind of start pulling this all together. And even if the work session is that discussion on how we proceed, that's fine too. Okay. Dave, were you first, I think, or do you want
Go
to?
ahead, John.
Okay, John?
It seems to me that I don't argue that what we're trying to achieve here can be achieved by this board. But the fact, when we try to look at assessment of the board as a body, seems to me the best test of that is made by the voters. I think that the people who elect this board take a look at how we're operating and how we're doing. So when we talk about an assessment of the board, I think that's the best test we can have, the one at election time. But the other point I want to make is if we're on the cusp of having a new board coming in, I think that we need to look at what we want to pass on to them. And I don't think we should be dictating too much at this point as to how we feel about it. What we should be doing is thinking about what's best to pass on so that they can pick up as a board and add to it their thoughts about the actions needed. I wouldn't struggle with all that we've got to do. I wouldn't interrupt that with policy governance right now. I think I'd put it off for a bit. And I think that we should think more about what we're going to pass on and how we're going to pass it on so that they can operate it, rather than making decisions that would dictate how they would have to act. I would put that on rest for a while.
Dave?
Well, we've been doing this for a couple of years now that we've had policy governance, and the first time we went to go through it, it was new to everybody. We didn't know what was going to work and what didn't work. I think everybody's got a pretty good idea right now what doesn't work, well, where we come up a little short. I think the first part of the year in 2020 would be a good time to go over, I would guess I would recommend a work session, is just go over the whole thing, and everybody here is going to have one of those sections that are either not followed or pretty much ignored or need some clarification. And I think everybody's got a better idea after having worked around it for a couple years to come up with constructive comments. I think the last time we did this, everybody was just kind of, yeah. We've heard all this a month ago. But I think we have some hands-on, and I think we need to clean up some of those policies and governance because we're the ones with the experience right now. And we need to clean it up so that the next board has a little better picture. You got to document everything you did so that the next board starts from where we left off. They don't have to start from the beginning again. So I do think we need to go after the policy governance, but I think we need to take it from a work session standpoint and work through the policies and decide which ones are problematic and which ones need clarification. And it wouldn't take long, I don't think, because there's just a couple of areas that everybody kind of scratches their head about.
Just to refresh our memories.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Pete?
Well, I'm not in favor of having Mr. Radkoff come up again.
Okay.
I look at policy governance like the Robert's Rule of Orders. If you don't adopt them, you use it as guidelines. There's so much that we try to get through with the day-to-day operations here, and then throw in policy governance, and we're doing part of it, but we're not doing all of it, and some of it, we modified it because we're not following it. So I think the work would be very helpful, and say we don't have to take the whole thing on, because just one thing like the reporting of different things, we don't do that. We do it a little differently. So I think we should discuss that in January, go over it. So it might not work for us. It don't work for everybody. So some people had it and they dropped it, but I think we got a pretty good operation here, and your budget tells you that's going pretty good, so. But January would be a good time, January, February, get into that, but I don't think we should start having people come in until we organize what we have and what we've done so far.
Randy?
Well, you folks have got a year ahead of you. You've got the rest of the month of December and then 11 months of 2020 to be the leaders, basically, of the township. And I think right now, with your discussions about strategic plan, I think you've got two of your strategic plan objectives, facilities and governance, already identified. You know, you're not going to want more than 5 items on your strategic plan going forward. So I think if you make governance part of that, and you have your open discussions in those work sessions about the governance, that's going to do nothing but help whoever of you remains on the board or decides not to be on the board and are replaced by somebody else new. It gives them that guideline in terms of what it is that your experience tells you is necessary going forward to bring them on board. Then you got to pick 3 other items for your strategic plan. You know, one of the things you might want to do for your meeting, your next meeting, December 17th, is each of you come up with two of what your hot button items are. What would be your top 2 items for a strategic plan, and then work on that and decide which 3 of those you're going to make in your plan, and then start working on it in January.
Recommendation? Everybody okay with that?
Simple.
Come up with 1 or 2? Okay. Were you clearing your throat for me, or?
No, I'm just clearing my throat.
Okay. Because I didn't see the light, I just want to make sure. Okay, thank you for that. 10A, consider scheduling work session for the manager's contract. As I said the last meeting, we need to have this done before we hire somebody, in my mind. So if you want to wait till the week before we do that, or if you want to work on it, I mean, the holidays are coming. I can't keep putting everything on January either, but even if we spent an hour working on it sometime in the next 3-4 weeks, just looking at it, or if you want to just give me some ideas and we can type it up, or, you know, you could go through and edit it yourself and submit them, give them to Randy. Thoughts? Randy?
I don't want to increase his workload, but you might want to shoot those directly to Roger to have him evaluate, you know, your comments from a legal standpoint before you consider them further.
I mean, if everybody kind of gives us their thoughts, we threw it around a little bit, and I could put like a red and black document together and have Roger look at it, or?
The board did spend a fair amount of time on the current one 2 years ago. So, you know, from that standpoint, it might be helpful if you had changes that you think you would like to see in the agreement, forward those to Roger and let him formulate it into a draft for you to take a look at.
Want to do that? Yes, no? John?
I thought myself that the latest versions of the manager's contract that we had delivered to us were in very good shape. I thought there was little discussion about amendments that needed to be made. What is the consensus of the board? And they've all seen this. Is there revisions that need to be made? We shouldn't be making them, altering it, if we're happy with it as it is.
Well, and that's one of the things I asked you too. If you don't want to have any changes, that's fine.
I know, but you don't have to have, let's find out what the consensus of the board is as to what they think about the manager's contract as it was last presented to us. Why don't you do that before you call a work session?
Well, we kind of did that. We talked briefly. I had 4 or 5 things that I thought should be changed.
Okay, you have
So
4
did
or
Ernie.
5. How about the rest of the board?
Couple. I don't know. Oh, imagine that. Go ahead, Dave.
First thing I'm gonna do is remove the lights, because apparently they don't work, or I'm gonna get the supervisor
Well, I
a new
just-
set of glasses.
Turn my head.
Put a buzzer on your seat.
Anyway, I think there's obvious things in the contract that need to be fixed, but I think you gotta have a manager before we can fix them. The rest of it, had pointed out to me in an earlier meeting tonight, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I don't think we should jump in and do a whole bunch of changes to it. I think it's fine just like it is, and even some of what you were pointing out, rewording some of those sections, if they work like they are, then why go to all the trouble of changing them?
Well, the benefits were the 2 things that I pointed out.
But they're obviously gonna change with the new hire versus a,
Well, why would you give a contract to somebody to negotiate that you think is going to change? Why would we give as much vacation and benefits to a new employee that we'd give to a 17-year veteran?
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There are obvious things that change based on the new guy versus the 17-year guy. Those are obvious things that change.
Well, that's what I'm asking.
Okay, but I don't think we should, no, you're not gonna hand this contract to a candidate and say, here, this is what we're offering you. Before you hand him anything, you're gonna make those changes that obviously
That's
have
what
to be
I'm
made.
asking for. That's what I'm saying. We need to, what are they? That's what we need to talk about.
Isn't the vacation pretty much laid out in the,
So they didn't.
not in your contract specifically, but in the general?
Policies.
Yeah, that's already in the
Vacation, sick
policies
leave.
and stuff. It's just a matter of applying the policy to the contract and making the adjustments that are needed to keep it with the policy.
Right. The first question I asked at the last meeting was, are we going to continue with the way the contract is referenced with the policies that are already in place? This is our contract to do with whatever we want with this manager. It doesn't have to follow.
I would think it goes back to if it's, I mean, we've been following the policy and it's
fine.
been working fine. It's my opinion that we don't make those changes.
That's okay. That's what I want to find out, is those kinds of things. If we want to offer them 20 weeks of vacation or whatever the number is, that's fine, but we need a working document to present. It can negotiate after that. I'm just trying to get you guys to narrow down. If you want this contract, if everybody says, leave it the way it is, that's what we'll submit. That's all I'm trying to ask. What do we give this candidate?
Well, you know what I'd like to see if we're gonna do that? I would like to see a blank contract with none of the names in it and things like vacation and all that adjusted for the first-year guy.
Okay,
And that's all in the policy. It's just a matter of what's there.
okay.
And change that, but have it a blank document, and then take a look at it and see if there's anything there that jumps right out at you, but I don't think there's gonna be.
Okay. Ernie, you had your light on.
I think the basic contract is fine. I think there's certain things in there we have to look at as a board, as a new employee coming in, as to where we want to start that employee at. And then look at all the basic things on the benefits. That's the key things. We have to look at those to start at, because in a new employee, you don't start them, an employee that's been here 17 years. You start them somewhere else in that too, and you go forward. You present that to whoever the candidate is, and at that point in time, the negotiations start. But you have to have a basic item in front of you to move on. And that's something that the board's gonna have to look at. Where it begins and where it ends, I don't know, but we have to look at that kind of stuff.
But all of that initial stuff is driven by the policy manual, right? Right?
Which goes back to
He's
my
shaking his
first
head.
question. If that's what you want, use as your basis.
For my opinion, it is, so.
Okay. Pete?
You know, we always look for resources and stuff like that when we do things like that. Here you got a guy, a manager, our manager's working for the township, and he really has the township, and he demonstrated that over 17 years at heart. Why don't you two sit down and talk about it and ask what he would do? If you don't want to do it right here, what would you do? I mean, you can't ask for a better resource.
Right.
He
but
lived there for 17, 18 years.
I don't have a problem.
That's what I would do instead
But
of wasting
it's
our time
still-
right here.
It's still
I
our
concur.
decision.
Exactly,
I'm
but, you
looking
know,
concur.
for some
he would be,
direction.
he would give you good direction because he lived it.
Yes.
If there's something wrong with it and he's not happy with it, he'll tell you about it. You know? Or you want an extension for another 6 months.
Randy,
Okay, your basic decision with regard to the contract comes down to one question. Question is, do you want to treat your incoming manager the same as the rest of your staff, or do you want to treat them differently? The contract as it's currently construed treats the manager the same as the rest of the staff. You're on the same classification compensation system, on the same benefits system, on the same policy and procedures system. The only thing that departs in the current contract is in terms of supervision, termination, resignation, and, you know, things such as that. Basically what it amounts to, the current policy manual that you approve, the board adopted policy manual addresses all of the things with benefits and working hours and everything else. The compensation system has a specific pay grade for the manager that runs from $78,000 at the beginning to $106,000 at the top on 2019 wages. So those things are all in place. So your basic decision is, do you want to treat your incoming manager the same as the rest of your professional staff or differently? You can certainly withdraw the manager's position from the compensation system, from the benefit package, and negotiate a separate agreement if you wish. And so that's basically your question. Do you want to leave it the way it is, treating the manager the same as the rest of the professional staff, or do something different?
that was a better way of me trying to, that's exactly what I was trying to say. You did a much better job, thank you. Okay? Think about it.
So with regard to, you know, retirement, with regard to vacation, the new person coming in would start at the beginning and then over years would accrue on up. More vacation, more sick leave, so on and so forth, based on years in service.
So Davis suggested that we start with a blank document and base it on the, I'm speaking for you, but you already said it, base it on the current levels. Do you want to start with that?
I'm suggesting that if the question you're asking is, do we want to treat them like the rest of the professional staff, or do we want to remove them from that, it's my opinion that we could treat them like the rest of the professional staff the way we have all along.
Okay.
I wouldn't deviate from that. Which, if you do that, then it makes that contract pretty simple, because it's just changing a few numbers and move on.
Okay, John?
The manager's contract was public information available to anybody that wanted to apply for the job. I would think that any applicant applying for filling the manager's role would first look at what is the contract that he operates under. With that knowledge, they would apply. It would seem that any revisions to that would come with negotiations afterwards, not before. For goodness sake, you don't tailor it to what you're thinking is coming. They applied for it and had that legal document, that public document available to them. They know the conditions, they know what they're applying for, and they know what it would take to revise it. It's wrong to try to tailor it now.
Okay. Go ahead, Ernie.
I don't agree. You're setting up for a new employee. You're dictating what you want to do with that new employee. Maybe I've worked too many major corporations in my lifetime. I've seen how they work and that. It's all laid out for the new employee and that. They don't come in with what the current employees are having. You look at what you offer at that point in time, and then you go forward. I have never seen anyone who had looked at policies or anything else coming in all the years that I did reviews and talked to applicants. And you're talking 20, 30 years of doing it and that. Never seen it. We as a board need to look at what we want to move forward in a contract for the new employee and that. We have a basic contract we put forward, and then at that point in time, the negotiation starts between that employee and the board and that. But you have to have a starting point. You have to go and that. And that's where I've done it all my life. That's all I've seen all these corporations done. And I work for billion-dollar corporations, the way they operate in that. And when you have to work with personnel and vice presidents and everything else in that, that's what's being done in that. And you have to remember, people, this is not our money that we're talking about. This is the taxpayers' money that we have to be concerned with in that, as to what we go forward in that. And we're not talking about 1 or 2 years. We're looking at someone that's hopefully will be here 5 to 10 years in that. We have no idea. We're very fortunate that Randy's been here for 17 years in that. If you look around us, you don't get managers that last more than 5, 6, 7 years. They seem to be going on, so. We have to protect the township and do the best we can for whatever candidate comes in and how the dollars are going to be spent as far as the taxpayer is concerned. That's why I look at it. I want to start with a basic contract, basic benefits in that, that's going to benefit them to start with, and then you negotiate for that point. I've been through that. I've seen it done in that. And I've talked to my son who works with this company down in Green Bay, and that's where they have to do it down there. They have to come in with the basic contract, and then they do negotiations if they want this person, and they go forward at that point in time. So that's the way it's done. So that's where I see it.
Okay, I'm gonna give you a blank contract to look at. And we're gonna schedule a work session, try to figure it out. Okay? Okay, thank you. Or anything else?
Nope.
Consider scheduling an interview for candidate number 4 for the manager position. I did email you the 3 dates that the candidate was available. I asked you to look at your calendars and let me know, let us know.
Isn't there just kind of one date?
Well, that's just my recommendation, because I'm really not gonna be,
I mean, all 3 work for me, but the way I read it, you know, there was just, the other 2 would not work for somebody else. So,
yep, I'm one of
Yes.
7, so whatever you guys wanna do is collectively is what
What are your,
happens.
what are your work date, or what are your session dates?
December.
January 3rd, I know it's one of them.
27, 29, and 3rd.
December 27th, December 30th, and January 3rd.
December 27th? What's the second one?
30th.
And the 30th, so Friday's the 27th. The 30th is Monday. And January 3rd is the following Friday. So Friday, Monday, and Friday.
The 3rd.
January 3rd works for me in that.
And you said after 2 or 3, Randy?
Afternoon on the 3rd would be good.
Would work for you. Thoughts?
Any one of them works for me. So if the 3rd works for everybody else, that's,
Okay. Should let him know, January 3rd, any certain time? Randy's
he
asking
said
for
after 3.
afternoon.
Yeah.
How about your schedule? 3 or?
Sure, we're out here.
4 o'clock?
Whatever you want.
On the 3rd, we talking?
I guess so, if
3
that's
o'clock?
consensus. 3 o'clock?
Whatever makes our candidate happy.
3 o'clock, January 3rd? Okay. I'll let you know how that works.
If it does work, we'll call special meeting for that day. Well, we can schedule it next meeting.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to get it done now, so I can get it on the next agenda. All right, we are down to considering the 2020 budget. You have the revised one was in your mailbox, and it was sent to you with whatever changes we had asked for or made. It's got the revised public works numbers in there.
What you were provided in your boxes and by email was your consensus budget that you achieved on November 12th. That is the budget that was advertised on November 23rd in the Mining Journal, that you already dealt with the public notice earlier this evening, that was out. I have received no questions or comments from board members or the public. I'm not aware that any member of the public has come in to look at the budget that was available. And it's before you for consideration. Actually, it's been addressed in public hearing already, and there were no public comments made. It's up to you.
I didn't have anything. Go ahead, Randy.
I move to adopt the consensus balanced budget to become effective January 1, 2020.
Support.
Motion and support.
The only comment I have is we had several budget hearings. I believe no members of the public attended, although they were on YouTube also. But no one tonight had any comments of public hearing. The budget is basically the same as last year, except for a few adjustments. One adjustment, and you'll see in the fee schedule, is a 25-cent increase in your garbage rate per month, so that's nothing really huge. And the only other increase from last year was a 35-cent increase in the wastewater per 1,000 gallons, which equates to a 4,000-gallon user per month, about $16.20 a year. So that's the only increase that I've gathered from this budget moving forward for the average resident.
And the fee schedule will be approved separately.
Separately.
Yeah, that's true.
Even though that's part of the budget, it's budget discussion, it's.
But that's my comments on the 2020 budget moving forward. I think the board did a really good job. We didn't have as many budget sessions as in years past because of the budget, I think, being kind of streamlined as it was, and there really wasn't many changes. So I think we did a pretty good job, considering a lot of places around us are struggling.
John, did you have any comments? You were the second, I think. You supported the motion.
Not on this one.
Okay. Then all in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote.
Oh, yeah, because it's, yeah, sorry.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Marks.
Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes?
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, then we can consider the 2020 tax levies.
This is the second time that you've seen these. They came to you at your second September meeting, I believe it was, when you authorized submitting them to the county. They were also included in the public hearing notice that went in the Mining Journal on the 23rd of November and are before you for formalized adoption.
John?
Move to adopt the tax levies as calculated by our township assessor to become effective January 1, 2020.
Second.
Motion and support. Comments?
Roll call vote will be Trustee Marks.
Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 7-0.
10E is consider the 2020 budget resolution and the Township General Appropriations Act.
You've seen this each year over the last 17 years. It has been updated for the budget figures for the coming year, 2020. And basically what this does is the formal resolution of the budget, and it also provides for the management and operation of the budget.
John?
Motion to adopt the budget resolution and General Appropriations Act to become effective January 1, 2020.
Support.
Motion and support. Dave?
I have the same old concern that I've always had with this, and I realize, I've talked to the manager, and I realize that it's not actually part of the budget, but we have, between general fund, wastewater, water fund, and the rest of the public works funds, we have $15 million that are not earmarked for anything. Sitting on the bottom of that summary sheet, and we've talked about it a number of times this year, that we get a breakdown of where that money is supposed to be spent. We passed some definitions on the emergency reserve fund. Some of that money certainly would be going into that or earmarked for that. And I realize that that's where they belong on the budget, and the wastewater, for example, the projected 2020 earnings, which are not increasing over the 2019 earnings, is $7,427,330. That money must be earmarked for something. It's just a matter of what. And we've got the same thing in water, and we have a much smaller amount in the general fund, it's like $707,000. And I realize that in the general fund, that according to the emergency reserve definition, there's supposed to be 33% of the 2020 budget should be setting in that emergency reserve fund, and that's going to be, I talked to the manager, and that's $400 and some thousand. It would be nice to see a breakdown. It doesn't have to be attached to this. It's just sooner or later we're going to have a breakdown of these funds and where they are earmarked for. And I get a little depressed when we got to keep passing these budgets with all that money sitting there that we don't know exactly what it's being used for. I mean, I have all the faith in the world that it's being used as it's supposed to be used, but there's no reason that anybody out in the public, the residents, shouldn't be able to pick up a piece of paper and see where that money is. And we just did a 35 cents per 1,000 gallon increase on the wastewater. First question I'm going to get at coffee tomorrow is we got $7.4 million sitting in retained earnings in the wastewater. Why do we need to raise the rates? Now, I can make the explanation that the operations of, or the cost to run the wastewater department for 2020 needs to be paid by the users in 2020. But that pretty much falls on deaf ears when there's $7.4 million sitting out there that nobody really knows where it is. I'm sure somebody knows where it is, but I don't know where it is.
It's all committed. I shouldn't say it's all committed. Some of it's committed. It might be for bills that.
I understand that.
Through
It's
yet.
just a matter of a list of where they're committed.
I did make a note to get a hold of John and visit with him because I didn't get the spreadsheet that I was recommending for the replacement and improvement stuff.
No, I talked to the manager yesterday, I think it was, and I know he said Lois could have that information and make it available, but I wanted to talk about it at the board because that's an awful lot of money.
Randy? Sorry.
Trustee Wiegand is correct. We did have a conversation about it, and then I met with Lois and with John, and they are putting that together for you as a separate report.
As a rule, it's not part, you don't break it down when you do the balance sheet, you just put it in there, you don't break it down like that.
No, it is. It's
Is it?
broken, yeah, it's earmarked. It's broken down. Oh, I don't want to say earmarked because that's not the proper term, but it is reserved funds basically for planned projects, projects that are already in the hopper, basically that are future projects that are currently being funded, and you're building a fund up for those projects. And certainly there is a portion of that is I'll call it a contingency. I mean, it's not specifically earmarked or targeted for a specific project. It's there for emergency use, and that's what Trustee Wiegand is talking about. Those definitions were adopted by the board, and they are being put into place on the report that they're working on to get to you. And I would suspect that you should probably have that within a few days. I mean, it's not a big deal to pull it together in a format that would be easily readable for the board members. It's in several different reports now, but they will pull that into a summary, so you'll be able to see it. And it'll be basically by line item, whether it's contingency or equipment replacement or whatever, and then there will be a breakout under that in terms of what equipment is being funded by it at what level. But there is certainly, we are in a position where some of that 7 million or 6 million is simply being held for true contingencies that occur. So we don't find ourselves having to do what the city of Marquette just did, 15% a year for the next 5 years because they're underfunded. So, you know, the whole point is to ensure that we are funded to address the things that we're planning, as well as things that might come up that we're not planning. But that will be identified. So, like I said, you should have that within a couple of days.
Ernie?
Same question or same comment from Dave had. Just coming up with an estimated future projects, so we have any idea what's going to happen into the future, and you can put some estimated dollars on them, so we know where we're at. And granted, there isn't a lot of people that's going to read this, but the ones that do read it ask some very pointed questions, and at times I kind of hem-haw around and try to give them an answer the best I can, but if we come up with something on estimated projects coming up and estimated costs and that, knowing full well, some of those projects may never come to pass. But if we have some idea what's going to happen, we can move forward on that too.
And some of those are physical. The facility itself, the building itself is ultimately going to need a roof. It's going to need, you know, there are different things that are being pre-funded, basically.
I think that's fine, but if you have it there, then the residents know that these are things that we are looking at, are things that have to be addressed now or into the future.
Correct.
That's all.
Randy?
I agree with Trustee Wiegand, but he's got to realize that those are addendums to the budget. They're not in the Appropriations Act.
Yep, we know that.
We know that.
Yeah, we've been
Well-
told that many
Did I
times.
turn my light off?
I'm getting tired of hearing of this. In my opinion, it's an Appropriations Act, and we don't have the detail on that. This is what we're voting on. The budget needs addendums to it, but that's where you cover those items, not in this act.
Right, he just brought up the question. Do you want to comment?
Oh, yeah. I preface my comments with the fact that I realize they're not part of the budget.
Yep.
But what happens is when they appear on a piece of paper, you just get the deer in the headlights look again that says we have $15 million, and what is it earmarked for? What is it set aside for? And I'm just saying that when the $707,000 that is a fund balance or forecast fund balance in the general fund, it should be right underneath, it should be broke down on where all that money is going. And when you add all the lines up, it should come up to $707,000. And we should have the same thing in the wastewater and the water funds. It should total up, and if there's money left over that is not specifically earmarked for anything, it should appear in there that it's not specifically earmarked for anything. It really has nothing to do with this vote, whether we approve it or not, but it just keeps bringing the question back up.
And I'm sure you want to address it once more before we finished all this.
Absolutely, because sooner or later, it's going to show up.
You should skip coffee tomorrow.
I think so. More? All right, where are we? We have the motion on the floor.
Correct. So the roll call vote will be Trustee Marks,
Yes.
Trustee Everson,
Yes?
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes,
You can vote no.
I'm fine.
Got a little difficult to get that yes out.
It is.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Clerk retires yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay. Still kind of working within the budget parameters, we need to consider the adoption of the 2020 fee schedule.
This, before you is the consensus fee schedule that you achieved on November the 12th. I guess I really don't have anything more to add to that.
Randy?
Okay, before we go to that item, this appropriation act will be in the minutes as written in the board packet. Usually we read it, and I don't want to read it because it's very long. So it will be as written in the packet in the minutes for clarification.
The first page you're talking about with
The whole
federal
thing,
resolution?
the whole thing.
Okay.
So the minutes for this particular meeting will be longer because of that act in there.
Okay.
And then I have the floor, so I will make a motion to adoption of the 2020 fee schedule.
Second.
Motion and support. Any comments? Mr. Ernie?
I think the comment we have to address, and whether I like it or not, we're gonna have to move forward on the wastewater volume, and it had to do with some changes in the public works and that, so. It's 35 cents or 38 cents, I don't have it right in front of me.
35.
35.
What concerns me a lot in this is that we have the city of Marquette and Marquette Township going through looking at water right now. And I'm concerned what that may come up too, and how that's gonna affect the residents of the township too, so. And we do have quite a few retirees, and looking at retirees, it doesn't sound like much. I think mine comes out a little over $1 a month on 4,000 gallons, somewhere in that vicinity, which isn't a lot, but to some people, it is a lot in that. So I just want to remind people that it is an increase. We did a lot of discussions before we moved on that dollar amount to move forward on that, because we found out that it's going to be beneficial overall for the township to go that direction in that. I'm just concerned with if we have to have any type of increase in water, how that's going to affect it, that. So I will be supporting it. I just want to tell you I am concerned with it, as how it's going to affect it in the future.
Go ahead, John.
You want to recommend a discount for us older folks?
No.
I had that
Little
discussion
increase.
how many years ago with the water rates? Well, knowing my average, it's gonna run me about $700 a year. So I'm on the other end of it, you know, because I'm gonna use more water than you guys, or the average person. So there is a
Take more baths over
There is a yeah, lot more showers. Randy?
Well, speaking about the water, will be in a rate study early next year, and we will get that result probably around in April. I'm thinking April or May. And if it increases, it's not really coming from our board, it's coming from that consultant that we hire to do that, and it's really not coming from us per se. It's a recommended rate from that consultant. It's the same thing as solid waste. The 25-cent increase really wasn't from us, it was from the landfill increases. So it really isn't us that's doing it, it's other factors that are causing those increases to go forward. And, you know, we just have to live with it and move on, and at least we're letting the residents know now, so if it's $1.20, they can budget for that a month next year.
Okay, Randy?
The other benefit of that is you will have your rates known for 3 years. That will come up with a rate for 3 years, for a 3-year period.
Okay.
And within that 3 years, you might want to take a look at phase number 2 of your water. and secondary supply.
We have a motion, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Roll call vote will be Clerk Rattari, yes. Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Trustee Marks.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
And Supervisor Duran.
Yes. Any public comment?
Yes. Come to the podium,
Feel
please.
free.
William Truscott, Marquette Township. I would like to know from this board, when a guy declines, I was here for all these meetings, and the guy called up and said he wouldn't have no fourth interview, he quit, he didn't want it. And this board called him after. And I think, I'm not a lawyer, but there's a lawyer here, I think he could answer this question. That's unlegal. In other words, you can call anybody you want, ask them for the job. But that's not legal. And you can ask the lawyer. I think you treat the other people, the three people, very bad.
Thanks, Willie.
Bad. Don't give this board too much for that kind of a deal. You don't beg nobody for nothing.
Let's get a comment from the attorney.
Can the lawyer give me an answer on that?
Research it.
It's not really a legal question, it's a political question. However, there is no illegality in that, it's a hiring process.
Yeah,
There was
maybe
extenuating circumstances in which this board inquired whether or not he wished to remain under
I was here,
consideration.
he called up and there wouldn't be no fourth candidate, he declined, he wouldn't, you know what? And then after he declined, they go back and call him? He declined,
For a medical emergency.
so what? He
It was
declined,
short.
He wasn't gonna have a show.
It was short-term, he asked for reconsideration, and the board granted it.
It's similar to the right to reject any and all
Sounds like
bids.
somebody's playing house. I don't know, that's my figure. Sounds like somebody's playing house.
Thanks, Roger. Okay, announcements? Anybody have anything to share? I was gonna give you an update on House Bill 5247. That's one of the items that we sent to MTA when we did our list of what they could bring to the legislature, and it involves the nonpartisan election of township officials. And as it stands right now, it's been introduced by Jeff Yarrock. And apparently there were other people besides us who made that same recommendation. It would require the voters to approve the change at the next regularly scheduled election, but prior to that, candidates seeking office would be able to run on a nonpartisan ballot. The primary would be held in August and allow voters to vote for candidates with no political affiliation designation. And there's a couple other details, but I just wanted to give you an update that that was one of the things on our list that apparently was on other people's lists, and it is something that they're looking at, so.
No dates or anything?
No, it's just been submitted,
It'd be another political discussion,
introduced, yeah.
It makes sense.
the parties.
So managers' reports next.
Pretty brief. You do have a printed report in front of you, as Clerk Rattari mentioned. The first item basically talks about your budget process. You did have a series of public hearings, and the budget has been presented pursuant to statutory requirements and has been acted upon by the statutory requirements. You did not have to adopt a budget until December 31st, but you did approved your consensus budget on November 12th and then confirmed it this evening, so the budget process is finished. Having said that, the budget, once adopted and approved before December 31st, is a living document. And by budget amendment, the board has the ability to modify, change, alter, however, by separate action. But you have met the statutory requirements of adopting a balanced budget prior to December 31st. Previously mentioned, we did have the Community Events Committee had the Catch the Vision Christmas tree lighting on last Tuesday, November 26th. We had a tremendous amount of support for it, starting with our own fire department and building and grounds department, in addition to the Community Events Committee, which again is Todd Nordyke, Barb Wiegand, Trustee LaRue, and myself at this point, and we certainly would welcome additional volunteers to work on the committee. This is the last formal event that the Community Events Committee sponsors over the course of the year. I mentioned earlier that we will probably, sometime in January, we'll have, given weather conditions, if we have ice, we'll probably have another 3-on-3 hockey tournament like we did last year, which was very popular. Westwood Mall was very good to work with. They provided the facilities for Santa Claus to visit with the residents and the children. The Westwood Mall was very good on that. Marquette Township Business Association assisted, Media Brew Communications, Sunny 109. Walt and Mark were there as MCs from 101.9. Applebee's, Aspen Dental authorized us to use their lot. Lions International, De Upper's Barbershop Plus Chorus was there for the musical entertainment. Ojibwa Casino was a financial contributor. Cedar Motoring was a financial contributor. And Honor Credit Union was there volunteering again to provide popcorn to complement Super One's very generous contribution of all of the hot dogs and soft drinks and chips to go along with it. So it was a great event. We had a lot of fun. The weather was great. The Grinch did show up. The Sheriff's Department was able to wrangle them up and wrap them up in some caution tape and planted them in one of the vacant storefronts in the mall so the kids could have some pictures taken and jab some things at them and feed them a little bit. We had a good time. Just a reminder, the township offices will be closed for Christmas on Tuesday the 24th and Wednesday the 25th of December, and then again on New Year's Day, January 1st. During those periods, if there's any need for public services, call the office number 908-906-228-6220 and follow the prompts for our emergency staff. We are staffed 24/7 on those days with service workers, so anything that you have an issue with can be taken care of. Last item, we're coming into the last of the firearms deer seasons with the start of muzzle loading hunting season on the 6th of December. That runs through December 15th. So still being out in the woods, be cautious, wear orange, make yourself known, and be aware that muzzle loading will be going on, muzzle loading hunting. And that's pretty much it. Last time the Corridor Committee met was November 12th in our community room. They'll meet again on December 10th at the Ishpeming MDOT office. And you'll be getting the minutes of your November 12th meeting probably for your next board meeting on the 17th of December. That's all.
Any questions for the manager? Ernie?
On all these individuals or corporations that helped out, are we going to send a letter to, say, the newspaper addressing that so they know?
We do. There has been an article published that has been submitted to the media, and we will be sending out thank you cards to all of them, basically. We do a handwritten thank you card from the Township Community Events Committee. Yep, for all of the events, that's true.
Are we going to be able to put it on our website too?
Yes, we will. Yeah, they deserve recognition. They step up and help us quite a bit. I guess just a couple of other things to give you quick updates. Generator is installed. It's connected. The only thing that has not happened yet, they finished the connections on Tuesday, just before the storm started, and they have not yet been able to get back to run the generator. But once they do that and run it and certify it, then we're good to go with the generator. Switches are all installed, the gas line's installed, everything is set to go. We will be upgrading 10 of our computers before the end of the year, yet this month. On January 1st, the Windows 7 programming will no longer be served. So we will have to upgrade to Windows 10, which is what all of you now have on your new laptops and your tablets. You have Windows 10. We have 10 of our desktops that have to be upgraded. That's going to be about a $14,000 bill because they will not run Windows 10. They're older units, and they're not capable of running Windows 10. We have 4 in the fire department and 6 in the office here that have to be replaced. We've placed the order on those. It's going to be about a $14,000 bill to do that. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we are going to be probably coming back to the board with a proposal for acquisition of a larger snow removal implement. We've been having a lot of trouble. Our John Deere tractor that we have is too small for the uses that we're putting it to now. It's requiring a lot of maintenance. It's down for maintenance again today, just because of the ice conditions and a variety of things that's not really compatible with that small snow blower. So we are out for quotes right now, and we'll be coming back to the board with a request for authorization to acquire a larger piece of equipment, a larger tractor with a bigger snow blower, basically to be able to clear our lots and to do all the pathways and everything else that we have now, the parks and the whole shot. That's going to be estimated probably about a $36,000 project, and I would propose that being funded out of our Metro Fund. We've got about $55,000 in the Metro Fund, which is designed specifically for maintenance of the public utility right-of-ways, which falls to the fire department, and this is a piece of equipment that's used to keep the fire department open. When we acquired the John Deere that we currently have, it was also funded out of the Metro Fund at that time. So that's just kind of a quick update on where we are.
No, with the generator being in there, and one of my questions to you was today or something, is that, is there something we could do for the senior citizens? You know, maybe a program once a week or twice a week, or Chalkley has a Tuesday and Thursdays from 1 to 4. But is there some way we can bring the seniors in here and have them enjoy the community building over there? They could do what they want for a couple hours, and also know that if something happens at home, like you discussed earlier, that they can't come up here and we'll be their emergency place to go.
With regard to, services for any of the residents, we have the capability of doing that now in the community room. So if there's any of those types of programs that the board's interested in sponsoring, we can see if there's grant funding available or working with some other agencies in the area to do that. With regard to emergency housing, we would certainly be capable of doing that with limits. I mean, we are limited in terms of what our capacity would be, but particularly for Trowbridge and things such as that, if people are without power and it's cold,
No heat.
certainly we can provide that kind of a service. We will be able to provide it. The bigger issue is when we have power outages, and luckily we did not suffer a power outage during this last storm. It flickered a few times. We were here all day Wednesday, and we lost power 2 or 3 times, but it was brief periods, and our battery backup covered that. We will no longer have that issue, and our computer servers will always be up and running for the fire department to access.
Dan?
I talked to Randy a couple days ago about the snow blower, and that person that I was talking to you about that had that, they've got 3 of them in their service.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking at one, and I've got an address. It's got 29 hours on it.
Oh.
And it's right in our price range.
Cool.
So I'm gonna pass this. It's in Alanson, just below the bridge.
Oh, yeah.
They can deliver, and,
Yep.
but it's,
We're talking with them, we're talking with one in Indian River, and we're talking with another one in Menominee.
okay. Worth looking into anyhow, I
Yeah,
guess.
and we've got, the quote that we have, with the price that we got from them, Genop is who we're looking at, that's Indian River. But the one that we're looking at is equipped with, it's new, with the new blower as part of the price. The actual price of the tractor's $29,900, basically.
With the blower?
No, the tractor itself, with the blower, it's about $35,000.
Okay. That one's got a bucket too. I don't know if it'd be beneficial.
Might be, we would have use for a bucket, for sure. So we'll get in touch with these folks, but we're waiting for a quote from them.
Possibly John would just be willing to give his up?
John. Oh,
It's
John.
not bucket.
This John.
It's bouquet.
The bouquet?
Okay.
Actually, Dave's next.
I would just wonder, it's nearing the end of the year and where we're at with our AV equipment.
With our
in
AV
the-
equipment,
In the community room.
it's kind of been put on hold because we're having the discussions about possibly converting the community room to some other use. So we did not pursue that at this point until we make that decision, and that's going to be coming up in your strategic plan, so.
I had that on my list, I'm sorry I forgot it. Anything else for the manager? Go ahead, Ernie.
Seeing that the 41 is pretty well done and the tunnel is open, is it being used, and who's overseeing it, that, and everything else going with it?
Does Recreation want to address that?
Overseeing what?
Seeing on the tunnel.
Yeah,
Unless you want to put in a toll booth.
Yeah, the tunnel is being basically maintained by the snowmobile groups and with the DNR.
Snowmobile season just opened on the 1st of December, so.
Boy, it sure did.
Oh, we have a person at the podium. Do
Oh.
you have an answer, response, or?
Well, I have photographic evidence that it gets used. I'm not going to say by who. The paving on the north side of the highway coming out of the tunnel has not been completed. So there is still a grade differential where the paving matches up with the concrete apron at the top in front of Riverside. So it is open. The trail south of the highway is not really improved beyond a two-track through a field kind of status. I'm sure it'll be fine for the winter months, but the south part connecting to the Heritage Trail will need some improvements next year for sure. So is it available to use? Yes. Is it complete? I would say the correct answer is no.
Springtime. But that's part of the DNR trail on that side, correct?
Yeah, it'll definitely be used by the DNR over the winter, and then I'm not sure what the agreements are for the remainder of the year.
I believe in the springtime, it's the DNR is going to be maintaining that part of the trail. I may be wrong, but that's my belief.
Last information we had from the DNR is they're actually working on putting some asphalt in from that tunnel up to the Iron Heritage Trail.
Right.
But that's something you won't see till midsummer if it happens. And then they're gonna continue that asphalt around and tie it up to the sidewalk up at Riverside.
Anything else for the manager? Okay. Mr. Clerk, our motions?
Okay, the first motion of the evening was to approve the consent agenda as presented, and it was a roll call vote because of the budget amendment. Second motion was approval of the agenda as presented. Third motion was to consider the 2020 budget, and that was approved by roll call vote 7-0. The fourth motion was to consider the 2020 tax levies. That was approved by roll call vote 7-0. Fifth motion was to approve the 2020 budget resolution and Township General Appropriations Act. That was approved by roll call vote. Motion carried 7-0. And the sixth motion of the evening was to consider the adoption of the 2020 fee schedule, and that was adopted by roll call vote and carried 7-0.
Okay, good business tonight. Any future agenda items from anybody that you see? Okay.
Well, the 2020 meeting schedule will be on the next agenda.
I hope to have something now that we're kind of backed off the hiring stuff for a little while. I give you the committee updates and work on that this week. So we can have that on the next schedule or agenda. Any board member comment? Oh, I didn't see. Sorry.
Just a quick update for the 17th, will also be the final, now that the budget's been adopted, it'll be the final figures for the Public Works reorganization, and then also the sheriff's contract for the 17th.
Yes, sir. I got Randy. Oh, okay. Pete?
Remind everyone, I don't know if you did or not, email for tomorrow night's Marquette County Township Association meeting dinner at Ishmarine Township at 5:30. So if you didn't, let me know, and I'll call up tonight or tomorrow. 5:30, Ishmarine Township. You and your spouse at the Ishmarine Township, that's on the west side of Ishmarine. It's always a good night, no charge. We're gonna have some raffles, some door prizes. And it's a good time to meet with other officials from the other townships and stuff like that, so try to make it. Thank you.
Thanks. Ernie?
I think Randy kind of took what I was gonna bring up. I was gonna ask about this here again, the status of it. That's where I'm looking at, so. So that'll be on next agenda then.
Yep.
Any board member comment? Just need another
I'll make a motion.
Support.
8:43. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thanks for holding out, John.